He would have started with very little capital, probably no capital. Just opened up a door here and then tried to do some things.
My father, or our father, used to say in this building, when he used to come in here as a young lad, he'd hear them talking, but they were always asking somebody to do something, to sell something, to buy something.
Can you describe the original business of Ray White as it was here in this shed?
Well, he was a mixed business. Like he had a business where he sold machinery, he sold livestock, and he sold property, and basically whatever he could sell. So that's what he did. He was an agent, and a true sense of the word in the country town. He worked for the local people, helping them sell whatever they needed to sell or buy, and he particularly involved in the farming industry.
He clearly was an entrepreneur, and he just went out and said, right, this is my community, how can I help them? What things do they need? What am I able to provide? And that led to a broadening range of services, including even providing insurance or organising insurance. That's a big spread. It all came out of this office.
What do you feel would have been going on in this building? Who would have been coming and going from this building?
It's often hard to remember or realise that this was actually in a railway siding. The end of the railway line from Toowoomba, trains came and shunted, and every terminus of a railway line needs sheds to put stuff in that comes off the train. There was a business centre in Crow's Nest, a row of shops and offices, where his competitors were located. He was not in the town, he was quite on the peripheral. And he had to make a presence and prove himself. He didn't, he would have started with very little capital, probably no capital.
Yeah.
Just opened up a door here and then tried to do some things.
The culture of auction, or Ray White's culture of auction, was born because of your grandfather's love of it. Can you explain how that came about?
The big thing that Ray had was the pig auctions here in Crow's Nest, and this was very much a dairying area, and in those days they separated the milk, the cream went off to Toowoomba to be made into butter, and the separated milk, which was of no real value to humans, was used for feeding pigs and young pigs, and then they'd have their pig auction in the centre of town, and Ray was one of the major auctioneers for that, and we can still see the pig yards with Ray's name on it and everything like that. So the pig day was a big day in town. It was right in the centre of town, and one of the things that the byproduct of pigs is they do smell a bit. So the shops used to shut on pig day.
Yeah.
And till after the sale was finished. And I guess that's the big part of his auctioneering, was in those pig yards. Then it became calves, and I guess he moved on to all sorts of things that he auctioned.
At one point, he decided to specialise in real estate.
He moved to Brisbane about 20 years after he started here. So he was only a young man in his early 20s when he opened here. So he moved to Brisbane in his sort of middle-aged, mid-40s. A big step. Brisbane must have seemed huge. And he went in then as a real estate agent exclusively. So that was a culmination of increasing confidence from what he had achieved here. The contacts he had confidence that he was able to develop a following and a community of clients. So he wouldn't have been able to specialise when he was here in real estate. It just wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So it was Brisbane in the early 20s, and he moved into a number of different buildings. He was fortunate to be given the leasing rights to a brand new building next to the GPO, which he then branded his business as Next GPO. It's amazing you don't use GPO in your sort of terminology anymore today. A huge part of his life was the exhibition, which is held once a year for a week in Brisbane. Country people come, and that was his big marketing opportunity. Even though he was in Brisbane, he still made a lot of sales in the country.
He had a big following for his marketing, didn't he? He was quite clever and creative in the way that he marketed not just his business but property as well. Are there any that stand out as memories for you? Any ads he had in the paper or anything like that?
He was an incredible personality. A little story where I was learning to drive and I was driving his car with him in it. He took the courage to let me drive. Anyway, I had an accident down in the Brisbane Valley with a tram, and the tram was jammed up against the side of my car, Ray's car. I thought, my God, Ray's going to be off his head. And the policeman came, and in those days they had numbers on their epaulets, and he could tell by the number that he was new in town. He said, "You're new in town, aren't you, sir?" And the policeman said, "Yes, I just arrived." And he said, "Have you bought a house yet?" Here I was terrified that Ray would be upset with me, but he took the opportunity to make a sale, and I guess that summed him up in a lot, that he always had that entrepreneurial feel that, you know, anything that happened was obviously a chance for some business to come out of it.
What are your memories of your grandfather, Brian?
Well, I remember him, as a classic grandfather. He used to loved telling stories, and he had a very unique way of speaking. And there was a particular character called Tommy Dodge that seemed to be central in all his stories. And I had the pleasure of using that character with my children and even my grandchildren, and even some of my grandchildren one of their dogs is called Tommy Dodge. So that character has continued for a very long time. But I particularly remember him for just stories, quite a few. The one that stands out particularly was his love of the Gold Coast. He had a property on the Gold Coast, and he talked a lot about the Gold Coast. And I can remember he taking me for my first surf as a very young boy, and he was sort of getting on then, and what didn't happen for very long, but that was a wonderful memory.
This shed that we're in is more than 100 years old and quite unique in that respect, but when it was originally located down in the rail yards, it was lost to the family for some time. How did you go about finding it and getting it back?
We knew it'd be around here somewhere. It had been shifted and was found on a property. People came and let us know it was found on a property, been used as a hay shed.
You put ads in the local paper?
Yeah, and we had to buy it off this farmer.
He knew what it was? He knew what he was sitting on?
Not particularly.
We could see the paintwork was still there, very faint.
Yeah.
Amazing, after 100 years, the paintwork was
Still there.
Quite legible, yeah. And subsequently, just been really dolling up what was already there.
Its location here now in Crow's Nest, how did you settle on that?
Well, this is the historic village. This is already here.
Yeah.
And we added to the village with this.
It's fantastic what the local villages have done.
Fantastic.
I haven't seen anything in Queensland to rival this.
You know, the old butcher shops, all the different shops and buildings that they've put here. And we added to it with this. And then we bought the house that they lived in, our grandfather and our father, and two aunties and uncle. And when it came up for sale, we had to buy it, and which we did, and bought it down and settled it here. So we're very much part of the historic village, but the historic village is so well run, and it's so terrific what they've done anyway.
There's a lot of the Ray White family coming here today ahead of Connect, and from what I can gather, that nobody passes up a chance to come here. What does this place mean to you and the people of Ray White?
It's our roots, it's a tree of knowledge, as the where it all started. And what we find with our franchisees and salespeople is they're promoting the identity, but to be where it actually started is something very unique. Quite lucky that way. We have it, My father, or our father, used to say, in this building, when he used to come in here as a young lad, he'd hear them talking, but they were always asking somebody to do something, to sell something, to buy something, to do something. And such a great lesson to agents. You've got to get people to do something.